introduce my group members.
Alyssa,
Rebecca,
Michael,
Paul,
Brandon.
All right. So the first question that I want to ask is, what does the media mean to you? So Alyssa, I'm going to start with you.
sure. So when I think about the media, I think the main thing I think about is just kind of getting the word out to the general public. I think it is an outlet in which people can kind of take a story and just go with it, and it can change based on who you are and who's telling it, of course, and it can be framed differently. But in reality, it's just a way of getting information out to people.
when I think of media, I think that media is the general public's best way of accessing information that would otherwise be difficult for them to get and to understand, because a lot of topics covered in media are not necessarily topics that individuals will go out and seek on their own in regards to either politics or how certain aspects of our country functions and that sort of thing. And I think it just serves the purpose of informing the public.
I look at media as really not just how someone will get news and information when they seek it out, but all of the news and information that is available to a person. So not just the internet, not just TV, but also books and stuff like that as well. That can be seen as media.
Yeah, for sure. When I think of the media, I just think of it as the medium. It's kind of funny putting words. I think of it as the medium of how the general public gets its information. Whether, obviously our idea of media that we grew up on has drastically changed from, our fathers and our grandfathers' version of media. We're not sitting around reading a newspaper anymore. It's all digitized and it comes at you like that. So when I think of the media, I think it's the big thing I think about is the medium in which it's changing.
the way I see it, we usually, like you guys just said, we expect the media to inform us, but I feel like the media feels like they need to persuade us and influence us, and especially nowadays, we have so many ways where we can just point that out where it's obvious bias or obvious favoritism. And back in the day, things like that, people who said things like that were usually seen as like just wrong, or you're crazy, or conspiracy theorist. But now it's simply a fact.
Right.
Yeah, I think the media kind of has a large grip over the population, if you think about it. I mean, I know that's a big topic in today's politics anyway, but the media has such a good hook over the majority of America, and what they put out, they can, influence idiots. I think we talked about it in the last
It's true.
Yeah, no, it's true. A lot of Americans are uninformed, and the media has a lot of power to kind of talk about whatever they want. And I think personally right now they're doing a bad job, but they should be the informer. They should be the middleman, the medium to the American people about, people with higher positions in government or any other source of information.
Right. I think with the kind of political climate that we are currently in right now, there's been this whole big driver of fake news, fake media, and I just think that when you're talking about how I don't know, idiots are misinformed, but it's true. A lot of people don't know who to believe anymore. They don't know which direction to go. So they're so willing to go with a certain media outlet that has a bias that I don't think we've ever seen before, because you look back in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, the information that you were getting was mostly just straight up news, journalism. But now everything, has a story to it. Everything, which is, it should have a story, but sometimes that story can get skewed. And, that's just a big thing.
I would say that media also serves a purpose of defending the public. Without journalists reporting on Watergate, Nixon, they were the ones who broke the entire story. They were known for their actions in making the public aware of what was going on, and I think that's the purpose that the media is supposed to do. They're supposed to, when everyone else in positions of power are doing things that are not 100% legal, the media is supposed to be there to call it out.
Right. It keeps them checked. That's why we have, check and balances in our government. We not only have it in our government, but I believe we have it in our media too. I think the media, I agree, the media's job is to keep a check and balance on our government to make sure, because you look at, some countries like Venezuela or, could you imagine, during Russia, Hitler's Germany, the way that he used propaganda, the media is a very, exactly, the media is a very, very powerful thing. And I think it's something that should be respected, but also debated about as we are now, because, like I said before, the current climate that we're in, it's important to be aware of the media and how powerful it can be.
It's important to note that information is the source of the public's power in a democracy. If your public is misinformed or uninformed, they lack the power they need to actually properly
Make decisions.
work a democracy.
I agree.
Another.
Sorry, no, you go ahead.
Okay, connecting what you said, the power of the people, a lot of that goes to citizen journalism, which is like when people like us report the stories and we were there the whole time, we saw what happened, versus a reporter who got there within like the last 20 minutes.
And
Like,
just
there was a big
right,
riot, and
right.
it's like, yeah, there was a riot because someone came in and antagonized these people.
There can a lot of times be a big difference between what's reported and what's actually.
Taken out of context. I think context is everything in the media, and I think the media uses that sometimes to drive their own agendas, which we'll get into later. But I think when things get taken out of context, that's when you have misinformed people, and that's when you have political unrest and unrest in general. So, does anybody else have anything else they want to say on that it's kind of a general, overarching topic, but we're going to dive deeper into it. And to start diving deeper into it, the second question that I want to ask is, so where do you guys get your news from and why? So,
I can start one. Yeah. I think that me personally, I'm kind of bad with this because I'll be on any kind of social media app, like whether that be Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, and I might see something because that's mass media. We all use it. We're all in our 20s, so we all see this stuff on a daily basis, and we might see an event, but I try to do a better job of actually, like, when I see the event maybe trending on Twitter or I see a hashtag on Instagram or something, to go into a place like an actual decent news source, like the New York Times or Washington Post, to research things more, or go into an actual report from someone credible to research these things more. But I do technically get my news from social media.
right.
For me, still connected to the social media thing, if something interests me, I'll automatically go to it. And connecting to technology, most of us probably have some sort of platform where we only see the stuff we know we like. So for like me, that'll be like superhero stuff or like anime. But other people, it's only going to be political stuff. But I don't even know that's going on until like someone mentions it to me. Like, did you hear so and so happen? And I'm like,
No.
which is kind of bad because I just don't know. So I usually have to go out of my head specifically for any political base.
But that kind of was going to lead into what I was going to say. Like, you like what you like. I like sports. I'm a big sports guy. So that's the beauty of Twitter and Facebook and Instagram is when they take, big data and they make it so that people get personalized trends. They get the personalized news that they want. And that's how that media source portrays it. Whereas, a general newspaper is going to just discuss everything because it's not personalized to every person. It's just general news. But, I use Twitter and it's the same thing with you guys too. If there's something that I find that's really interesting that I find on Twitter, I'm going to further research it because of this whole fake news kind of thing. I'm more aware now. I'm so much more aware now that I need to be careful about what I retweet or repost because it could very well not be true. So it's worth, my due diligence to go and search further. So I would definitely say that, I use social media as my, main media outlet, but I am definitely not opposed to further researching something that I become interested in.
So just kind of going back on what you were saying, so I know that this kind of just came to my mind, but so you're talking about how Twitter and Facebook and social media, a lot of them are kind of targeted to what you want to see. So there's a reason why we're seeing a bunch of posts that we're interested in seeing, and we're not just like, oh, this is boring. That doesn't happen. It's because things are actually targeted to us. So we also spoke earlier about how we think that the role of media is to keep us informed. So would you maybe argue that social media is not the best? I'm not coming at anybody's side or anything like that, but would you argue that maybe social media isn't the best place to be getting our news if the news is being specially targeted to us? Shouldn't we be, to be fully informed, shouldn't we be informed about everything that's going on, not just something that we want to hear?
I have to say, absolutely, you're absolutely right. Having this personalization and the ability to select what news you hear takes away exactly what I was talking about earlier. The power that the public has in democracy is information, and if you're only hearing what you want to hear and what you want to see about,
Are you really that? Are you really informed?
are you really? That's what I was going to talk about myself. I consider myself a bad citizen of democracy because I look on social media and I see things about what I want to hear. Like, one of my biggest interests in politics is gun control, and that's what I see on Instagram. That's what I see when I go on Google. Google has personalized messages for you. So that's really all I stay updated with. And if I see something, I'll go and Google on several.
I just think for the just the average guy like me, like that, I'm not big into politics. I don't follow, a lot. The only thing I really follow religiously, like I said, is sports. So that's what I like seeing. But then again, if I do see something, political that I'm interested in, I can always further research it. So I think there's arguments on both sides that I agree, that am I really being completely informed if I'm just kind of looking at what I like? But also at the same time, I like what I like for a reason, and that's what I want to see.
Right. And I don't think it's like, and I do the same thing. Like I get a lot of my information from, I'll see it on Facebook, and sure, maybe I'll go do some extra research on it or whatever to make sure it's credible. But I think that my initial point, what I was trying to say, is not so much an attack. It's not really an attack at all, but like it's not an attack on you. Like you guys are really consumers, right? We're the consumers. It was more an attack on the
just acknowledging the platform
of social media, right? Because
in general.
you see, like this is not something I don't think people realize it as much, and I think it's a lot more discreet in social media. I don't think everyone realizes. Sure, right. If you're going to go get your news, if you only watch Fox News, there's a reason you're only watching Fox News. You agree with what they're saying. They support your views, and that's most likely why you're going to there. Same with MSNBC, same with CNN. So those are more, again, there are still plenty of uninformed people in this country who don't realize the bias in those media sources. However, it's a lot more blatant than what you're getting in social media. And I think that's tricky because a lot of us, especially like the younger generations, are getting their information more from these sources. And so they're thinking it's more unbiased when in reality it's not necessarily, or they're thinking they're more informed, but again, they really are only getting one side of the story. And it may not be the story that the larger company wants you to get, it's the story that they know you want to get.
Right.
But is that really their decision to be making for you? I just think it's an interesting thing to think about.
Okay. For me, when I get my news, we're pretty old school at my parents' house, so we always all watch the 6:30 news, national news, CBS, after WDBJ. Personally, I can't watch the news anymore. It's too anxiety-inducing, so I read it.
Right.
I do get mine through Facebook, admittedly. But I also have downloaded a lot of news apps, like I'll have CBS, the Washington Post, New York Times. I have it all on my tablet, I read a lot of Reuters, New York Times. I just enjoy reading it better because I think it allows for more research. Because, watching the news at 6:30 just really makes my head want to explode now. And I used to love watching the news too.
And that's a big thing. The figurehead at these news outlets, whether it's you like Anderson Cooper, you like whoever else, you're watching them for a reason. Are you really? And it kind of goes back to this whole discussion. Like when you're watching somebody that you like, you're not going to watch somebody you don't like,
Right.
right? I mean, none of us are. So you're going to find somebody you like, and he's going to be taught because you like him. You're going to like their platform, and when you like their platform, are you starting to develop a bias with your media. So
See, and the reason that we actually watch CBS is because it is a national news source as opposed to like CNN or Fox News, because it gives us a broader range of information,
right.
and that's why we've always watched it. I can't watch Fox News or CNN.
But at the end of the day, it really does come down to
What you're used to.
what you
yeah.
like and what you're used to. That's just human nature. You're gonna gravitate towards something that you enjoy as opposed to not enjoying.
Great.
So I'm gonna round it back in. So my next question was gonna be, well, when we find this news, how often do we continue to dive in deeper? But I think we discussed that. So I'm gonna go to the next question. So how often do you guys share news that you get through the media with your peers? So I can start this one. So for me, if it's sports news, and then something big happens, somebody gets traded, this or that, I'm immediately sending it to one of my friends. But if it's something that has to do with political or whatever else, depending on the situation, obviously, if it's something crazy going on, I'm going to share it with my friends. But if it's just the daily, ins and outs of our government, I'm not going to be the one to share. So that's just my personal opinion, but I kind of want to hear everybody else's thought.
For me, it still connects to that. Like, depending on who my friends are, it's going to dictate what I discuss with them in the news. Like, my friends I play the game with, obviously, going to talk about, oh, did you see the trailer for this? Did you see the cinematic trailer for that? But with my girl, who's not super political, but more informed on, like, real life stuff, she's going to be like, oh, what did you think about this case? Or did you see what happened in Maryland today? And we're going to discuss that and discuss our morals and beliefs based on that. But with my friends, it's definitely going to be like more casual. And yeah, it just depends on who I'm talking to and what I'm going to share with them or feel the need to bring up.
I agree.
Like my group chat from back home, like my good group of friends, we're constantly sharing news articles with each other.
Same.
Like I have a friend who still reads like the hard news, and like he'll go in there and like pull news from like New York Times and throw it in our group chat. Like we'll talk about an article or something.
Me and Elizabeth do that all the
that.
time.
Yeah. I mean,
Any breaking news story, we are immediately sending each other articles and like orienting for like an hour.
anything from like sports trades to giant political events that happen to anything international that may be interesting. Or I mean, I remember when Harambe got shot.
Everybody remembers.
Yeah,
never forget.
No.
Yeah, if I read something interesting, I try to share it with my peers and my friends that I know would probably be interested as well because I find it interesting.
Yeah. I know that, oh, sorry.
I tend to inform everyone in my case, whether they're interested or not. I'm pretty good about annoying people so that they know what's going on. And honestly, that's why I enjoy journalism. Like, I used to send my grandma articles and articles in a day trying to make her understand things. Like my grandma's really odd. She would watch Fox News, MSNBC. She actually watched a good range of stuff. And I'm sitting here.
She's got range.
And I still feel myself having to send her these things to give her the ability to understand how these things affect people outside of herself was kind of my motivation for it. And I would send her articles and articles on end. I don't have to do that anymore because she's, come around to a lot of things, and I'm like, paid off.
I know that, we're kind of going off what you guys were saying too. I have a similar thing. Like, I have one good friend from back home who stays pretty much like up to date with what's going on. And so me and her will have more like sophisticated discussions about maybe something that's going on. But I kind of take the whole like read the room kind of rule. And so a lot of my friends who I have here aren't as interested in politics or global politics or what's going on. In part is because they don't 100% understand what it all means. That's in no way a dig. It's very confusing. I don't think if I weren't learning about these in my classes consistently, then I wouldn't. But ever since I know that I became a political science major, I became like the go-to person in my family, and also like within my friend group. I'm like, okay, ask Alyssa about this, maybe she'll know, which is absolutely not the case most of the time. But I know because of that, I have like kind of felt almost more of a responsibility to kind of dig deeper, get both sides of the story, what's going on, so I have a general understanding of what's going on and like why people are thinking that. And so I will sometimes, like, if something is like outlandish and just absolutely insane, I'll like share it to like all my friends. But again, it really kind of does depend on when we're talking about news. It's not just politics. I mean, we have entertainment, we have sports, and those things. I mean, I'll share things like on Facebook or whatever, like nobody's business, but it's like not important. It's like I don't know, like something that's going on with like some celebrity that's like in reality is not all that important. And like of course that's what I share with Reckless Abandon because everyone can relate to it more or less. However, it's interesting like when we get to like the really hard hitting topics, there's a very select few people I can talk to about it, or not that I can, but that are interested in talking.
Yeah.
Right. And those people tend to be either people I'm taking a class with like in political science and like they're passionate about it as well, or it's like my dad and my uncle and people who like have like, who are older and like I realize like the importance of this and understand that. And even then, like my dad, who like me and him will talk a lot, he was a political science major in college, so like this is something that like directly he understands. I mean, living right outside of DC, like he lives in DC, so it's all things that like really affect us. So again, I feel like it's a really select group of people of who I'm actually having this like conversation with and like grabbing. I mean, the majority of the people I interact with, I'm really not sharing stuff with.
I do have a point to point out. I have a good family friend. We on the political spectrum are about as far away as it gets. She's also a good 60 years older than me almost. Maybe 50 years. So during the entire 2016 election, we were doing pottery in our pottery studio, and we were talking politics the entire election. Covered the whole spectrum. And I actually find it's more fun to seek out people who don't believe the same as I do, because I really like a good debate, and I want to see where people go and see, you know. It makes it more enjoyable for me. I've had people in classes at Bridgewater, like, I brought up politics in the middle of chemistry, and it was the most fun I ever had. You know, honestly, I think having a good, healthy debate on where your news is coming from, really, like, me and Luella politically are nowhere near the same person. She knows I have a love for political science, but us informing each other on these certain things and how certain things will affect each of us is also very different in a lot of our political stances, which is why I think it's good to have that constant discussion.
I do have to say that I am almost exactly opposite from you. Debate gives me anxiety, and if, I won't bring up politics or anything like that unless somebody else starts a conversation on it. And
I'm good
that's
to
just
open
the
the
way
door.
I am.
I don't want to get too far off topic. This is exactly what I wanted to bring up. So, do you three are not political science majors?
No.
We have to. Do you like to seek out people who have different views than you to get a better understanding? 'Cause I do.
I do it all the time.
I actually I started a political debate union in my high school. Me and my friends did. And, like, we all kind of had the
awesome.
same ideas, but we went and like seeked out like other
It's
people
so
who had
fun.
opposite ideas, and we would literally just bring a hot button issue and
It's
talk
so
for
fun. The
2-3
more
hours.
controversial it is, I swear
Yeah.
it makes it more
But
fun.
would you three argue you would not? You said you didn't. I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth, but would you guys perhaps maybe say that
No.
you'd rather just, or you'd steer away from like,
Debate.
yeah.
Alright. For me personally, it depends. Depends on what the topic is. And it depends on, honestly, the person that I'm arguing with. Because
Sure.
there are a lot of people that are very set in their ways. And I think that's
Absolutely.
kind of, I honestly think that's kind of the downfall of the way that, you know, our society's kind of become. It's either you have to be hardcore one side or the other. I'm not. I'm steady at the other. There's things on the left that I agree with, and there's things on the right that I agree with.
Right.
But if I know I'm arguing with somebody that's set in their ways,
Yeah.
there will be no convincing them. And it's just, and I'm not the type, and I'm, like I said before, I'm not big into politics anyways, so is it worth my personal time to get in an argument with somebody over an issue that I know I can't convince them differently on?
Yeah.
I mean, and I respect you guys being political science. I think it's awesome.
No disrespect whatsoever.
And
Yeah.
you like what you like. I mean, everybody's got an opinion. Everybody's got their own viewpoints on the way that, be it the way they're raised or the way that they learn things through whatever. But I don't know. For me personally,
Sorry.
that's just me.
Yeah.
It depends on what it is. Like you said, if I know I can talk about it, I will gladly go back and forth with someone over it. But if, like you said, if they're just stuck in their opinion and they're saying I'm wrong and not listening to me, that's going to make me just be like, okay,
I'm gonna
whatever.
shut down.
I'm not going to be
Yeah,
interested in it.
totally.
And I think I should revise what I said. Heated debate will give me anxiety, but I love to have
A conversation, just a nice political
Yes,
conversation.
absolutely.
When you see different viewpoints, and that's what makes a person, that's what makes us a good person, is when you're able to be an active listener and take viewpoints from different areas and be able to create an opinion for your own. I think it's a beautiful thing to be able to have a polite conversation with somebody about a topic that you might not agree on, but you can see, their view, and that makes you a better, more informed citizen. I think that makes you the most informed citizen of all.
I
is to be able to-
have a funny thing to
understand
go
that.
off that. So I use really controversial topics as icebreakers because I'm not good at small talk. I'd much rather gauge people by, let me see where this goes. I personally use it as an icebreaker, and it's a really good way to get to know people very quickly, I find. So I just find that not everybody's into it, but honestly,
You like what you like, right?
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't mean to get us off topic, but
Yeah, so we're good. So I'm going to move to kind of the next topic, media bias. I think it's obviously in our society today, I think we all have something to say about media bias. So just kind of in general, do you think the media is biased and why?
I definitely think there is bias present in the media. Whether it's present across all forms of media, that varies between the topic. But I do have to say a lot of it goes back to what we were saying before, where people choose their media.
Right.
And I know watching the newsroom
Yeah.
on the first day, people picking their media has created this divide in what media is covering. So you have the far right media and the far left media surfacing and becoming more popular because people are becoming more divided.
Right, and they're finding that media that they enjoy, so they stick with it.
And I think that's definitely where our bias is coming from.
Agree?
I would say the bias in media spans from a lot of different factors. It's not only the source that we get it from, but the people who control those sources and what their personal gain is from it, whether it's economically, whether it's personal stance, whether it's promoting their own, from corporation bias, from the companies that buy out commercial airtime to air certain news broadcasts. It's based on consumerism. So it's not just factual or entertainment based. It also has another layer to it that I don't think gets recognized as much, which is the corporate base. Because corporations play a large role in our media without a large percentage of the general public even grasping the idea that there are people behind the people. Behind the people showing you the news.
There's a puppet master.
Yes.
They show you what
They want
you
to show you.
to see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that the thing that really kind of concerns me the most about when we talk about media bias, is the financial aspect of it. So the thing that concerns me the most is that a media source can get away with saying just about anything they want if they have enough money. And what I mean by that is, for example, like tabloids and gossip columns and stuff like that, where they make all their money off of just saying lies, outlandish things, and like they're well known for being kind of outlandish, but it's still shared on Facebook, it's still shared on Twitter, it still gets out there. And the thing is that they can say something that's 100% incorrect, get in a lot of trouble for it, get sued, and just pay it off because they make so much money on that story that they can use the money from that story to pay off the like lawsuits. Right, and so the company is like the corporation will go live to see another day, no problem, keep doing the same thing. But that person, for example, like let's just use like example like someone saying Obama is from Kenya and asking for the birth certificate, right? So that
Trump did specifically.
right. Well, let's say if it was a media, a newspaper said that, and the newspaper gets sued, they pay it off because they're a big company and have money. That's fine. They can continue to make stories and everything. But Obama is hurt from that, and like maybe hurt in the polls, or and so that person is still being affected, regardless of whether or not they win the lawsuit. There are residual effects that come from that like can't be controlled, and the media is almost untouchable in that aspect.
Right.
Now, of course, it does depend on not everyone's going to get away with it. You have to have a significant amount of money, but I just think there is a lot of money in this area, and I think that it's concerning where it's coming from, how it's being used, and stuff like that. So
It's the business of misinformation.
right.
No, and going off of that, when people believe conspiracy theories like Obama being born in Kenya or Pizzagate, there are thousands, hundreds of thousands of Americans who will not do further research and will believe that a sex ring operated in the basement of a pizza place that does not have a basement.
Yeah, and all they gotta do is, and that's the thing about social media now. It's so
fast.
easy to spread misinformation,
Yeah.
and
the effects are long lasting.
and they are, and I think that I think it's really started to bring about like a deterioration of journalism.
Mhm.
Like, what do you even believe anymore? You know what I mean? Like, these media outlets are controlled by big corporations, and it's causing, look, at the end of the day, this is what it all comes down to. We're in a capitalist country. We are a bottom line driven country. Everybody is out to get everybody's out to get their money. Is there still media outlets that are truthful and no matter what, just of course, but there is an obvious there is an obvious look, numbers, ratings. It's so important and so vital to these companies, especially when they're owned by these big corporations. Because at the end of the day, they don't care. They're getting their money one way or another. So, and I think that kind of our culture is a big reason why our media bias has started to turn its ugly face a little bit more than it used to be.
Connecting to what you said, the whole America's a business aspect, conflict sells. Like everything we watch is based on conflict.
Yeah,
Two
that's
people
true.
against each other, sports, movies, everything. So when you have that within the real world, people are going to gravitate towards it, and the more you churn out, the more you're going to get into it, the more people are going to pick whatever side they're on and stick on that side, and not be interested in hearing what the other side has to say.
Yeah, I think that there's a pretty prevalent bias in a lot of media sources. You guys all kind of talked about what I was going to talk about.
Sorry.
But I do think that there are other sources of media. Like there are some places that do it right, that do real.
Reuters is now.
Yeah. There are a lot of places on the internet and hard print news and whatever that actually do news correctly, where they're just informing you about a topic, and there's not really a bias, or they're not really spinning it.
It's just literally this
They're
is
just giving you
information.
the
Here's
facts.
your information.
Yeah.
Do as you please.
And you can figure it out for yourself.
And I was going to say, you had mentioned earlier that you like reading your news instead of watching it. Because when you read it, you're just getting straight words.
No
It's just
personality,
information. There's no
no
personality. There's nothing. And it's just you getting your news. So I want to keep moving forward, though. So speaking of media bias, I want us to kind of all go around and kind of speak about one event that we remember where the media seemed to kind of have a little bit of an agenda behind it. So, I'll start with you.
My event actually, I'm gonna shed light on one of the good events that was probably. I mean,
No,
I'm
it's
sure
good, and there's good and bad, there's good agendas, and there's
Yeah.
agendas are agendas.
So mine and my own experience when I actually did research on this, this was one of the topics that came up recently where I had seen it on Twitter. I had seen the hashtag Yellow Vest protests, which were happening in France, and I think the media did a pretty good job of just informing the public. I really didn't look into any articles where they seemed super biased, but I went online and I think I went to the New York Times and I looked for articles written about it, and I think that pretty much all the information that I saw on these protests were pretty informative. Like they gave the reason why these protesters were protesting, and they kind of just shared their information with the citizens of the U.S. or whatever other countries are listening, and let them decide like what side you're on. Like, do you side with the government or do you side with the people who are out protesting in the streets? And I think the media actually did a very good job. You know, normally we see kind of bias in situations, but for the most part, from what I've seen, I really didn't read any bad articles, you know, that you would click on for like clickbait or anything, but I think they did a great job
Covering it, right?
Yeah.
One event, this was obviously a while ago, was 9/11, and dealing with that, the media was biased against the terrorists, you know, and they were, that was, I guess it's kind of positive.
I mean,
Unifying
well, they did a
the
terrible thing, but at the end of the day, like, what do they keep showing on TV?
Yeah, they kept showing the
Right.
towers, like, we have to take our
Emotion.
country back, you know, they're destroying our people, they versus us,
Right.
which of course is the United States also, so still tying in with that whole message, and that showed that when it's something that's impacting us, we can come together and we can all realize this was wrong instead of being against each other, you know?
I agree, and I kind of want to build on top of that. I also think that, you know, the agenda, I think that kind of the agenda that came behind it is that, you know, all the emotion that came out of it and all the same pictures that they kept showing from it, you know, that rallied, you know, our country together because, and it was a big reason of why we went to war because, you know, it was something that we, you know, we couldn't go a day without saying, I mean, obviously we were all 4 or 5, but like, at the end of the day, like,
We're still talking about it.
we're still talking about it. It's one of the biggest things that's happened in our society. And moving on from that, what I was going to say is, you know, one of the more unfortunate things, probably the most unfortunate thing about our country right now is the school shootings and the public shootings that almost happen on it. We've become so numb to it.
It's really
And
bad.
it's really sad. But at the end of the day, what happens is they take an event that happens, and it leads into every single time. And it's important. We should talk about it, but every single time, the agenda behind it is we need to talk about gun control, the root of the problem. Like, you know, whether or not you lean on one side or the other. But my kind of problem with it is that I feel like the event doesn't get as much coverage as the ongoing debate behind it. And I think the news media, I think the media drives that more than anybody else.
I will say, because that is such a newly discussed topic with the number of shootings that we've had every year, I think part of the problem with the way it's covered is because it's so difficult to address so many issues that lead to it. So I do think that as much as, you know, these events keep happening in Charlotte, there was a Colorado shooting 2 days ago where, you know, like a senior just died. So it's like, we're also numb to it. How do we address it without
Just kind of starting it off until until the next one. And I know you were going to talk about Parkland.
Yeah.
So like, what specifically about Parkland do you remember how the media portrayed that and the agenda behind that?
It comes back to the type of media that I was receiving.
Right.
There was definitely a split in the coverage for Parkland. I definitely received the media that it kind of framed the event as the government's fault because they have not regulated guns well enough.
And less about would you say less about the event? Like
It was much less about the event.
yeah.
It was having been numbed already to the school shootings. I feel like this was just seen as a chance to jump on the topic. Stir it up.
The debate train.
Yeah.
I do have a question about that. Do you know that most of the students that were in Parkland are the ones that were rallying for it, though? It was students, David Hogg, Emma
Absolutely.
Gonzalez, and there were actually a few suicides this year from Parkland students.
Right, and I remember that too. They did start like the whole national. I mean, he's verified on Twitter. I've seen him on Twitter. I think the point that's being made though is that I just think that when these events have happened in the last 5 years, because we've become so numb to it, the events just like, I hate to say it, but it's like whatever. Like it's like here's the details of what happened, and then boom, we're already diving
On the next
into
one.
we're already into a debate, and then it's till the next one, and then we're gonna do the same debate again.
It wasn't about the tragedy.
Yeah,
It was about the ideology.
and it is something that needs to be discussed. It is. I mean, 100% is, but I feel like the event itself is not covered as well because they're so focused on the what's going on behind it. So
Right.
moving forward from that, do you have anything to add?
I was gonna say, one media bias that I've seen predominantly is in the coverage of instances of police brutality where unarmed civilians are killed by police officers. And typically the way the media portrays it as the individuals who are usually dead in this scenario as the criminals and, oh, they brought it on themselves. These are police officers acting in self-defense. But I've noticed a big difference between the way it's covered federally and the way it's covered on the local level. I know where we used to live in North Carolina, I still get their news on my Facebook, sadly. It's very, certain issues are, especially with racial tensions, are vilified a lot quicker. And I feel the local level news isn't as open to all of the possibilities surrounding scenarios which lead to police brutality. And the way minorities, because it's predominantly minorities who are involved in this, are seen as individuals with lower standing that, oh, this was going to happen anyways, that they brought it on themselves, and that, we see mugshots. And then we see pictures of officers with their families. I think there's a real purpose behind it, and again, I think federally and on the national level, I think we're starting to see it more broadly covered in a more equal light.
Right, but definitely I 100% agree with local news. I mean, every single time that you see something that's, honestly, if it's white versus black or it's two races,
every time.
it's, the white guy's here, you see him a picture with his family, nobody expected him to do it, nobody thought he would have done this. But then if it's the black guy or this, the Spanish guy or whoever else, they're always like this,
This was
he had
gonna
been in
happen
trouble
anyways.
before, just for like petty things, like maybe,
A parking ticket.
yeah, like, and they just,
Literally, yeah.
and the media paints them in a light that, kind of, and it's deeply enrooted in our culture, and this is a conversation for a whole other time, because this is a long page of information, but, it's definitely deeply enrooted in our society,
Defending the white man.
the racial
Racism.
the race
Yeah.
racial
Yeah.
racial bias.
Yeah.
It's the racial bias, and the media is
The main perpetrator.
honestly the driver of it.
I saw a headline not too long ago, and it was a picture of a minority man. And the headline was, "Police shoot a man with no active warrants." No active warrants.
No.
That's the way. That's
But
the
you know what,
most
that's gonna-
backwards way of saying innocent man that you could come with.
And that comes back to the bottom line thing, because people are going to see that on Facebook, and what they're going to do.
We're gonna share it.
Yeah.
So, Alyssa, do you have
Yeah,
anything
so
final to add?
what I was kind of focusing in the events that I was focusing on had to deal with rape and sexual assault. And so similarly to race, we see kind of thing with gender as well. The one I kind of turned to was the Brock Turner case, the Stanford swimmer, who the media portrayed him as like a 4.0 student. Gosh, he was getting such an awful deal in jail. This is a man or a
Who's
college
gonna be a
student
US
who,
swimmer?
yeah, he was an amazing swimmer at D1 school. Also is a convicted rapist, and I mean, there's the story, like, there are some stories out there that, like, the facts are kind of muddled. This one was not even really one of those.
Yeah.
He raped a girl who was unconscious behind a dumpster.
Like, I mean, it's
There,
terrible.
it was what it was, and it's really bad. And Time
Too bad it's
Magazine, Sports Illustrated, all of them are like, future swimmer, or like
Not rapists.
Not
They
rapists,
never
never
called
said-
him,
yeah,
They
no.
would just be like, well, you know, he's supposed
Yeah.
to be that.
yeah, and all these.
You're more likely to get cut from the NFL for kneeling than you are to go rape a girl.
Right, and I mean, right, and so it was just the way these stories are framed. It wasn't, and you could have two articles that are giving the same overall facts, and one will be like, here's a person who did this, and it's really awful, and here's this poor kid, listen, he's lived a great life, he's done nothing wrong up to this point, and like, it's totally fine. It doesn't matter in reality, like, it doesn't matter, but of course, what we're seeing here is just a different way of kind of spinning the story to making him look better than he is. The pictures they used of him, there's two pictures. There's one of him, his mug shot, where he looks kind of crazy. High, he does look high. And then there's one of him,
In the
it's
suit.
his roster picture, and he's him in a like suit and tie, looks very nice, well educated. And that's the picture that most people saw. So it's a way, right, yeah. And so, again, it's the same thing, like, with racism, they're also seeing, and I don't want to necessarily, it's not necessarily sexism, but I think that it is a way of just kind
They
of,
vilified her more than they vilified him.
right,
They
Right.
did the same thing in the Duke lacrosse rape case.
Yes.
I remember
Yeah.
that. You know, the guys were like, they were, you know, co-captains of the team.
Yeah.
And, you know,
They
she
were
was doing this and
fraternities
she was
too.
doing that.
yeah,
It is something that is deeply enrooted in our culture.
yeah.
That has it
Right.
seeps its
Culture.
way. It
Yeah.
seeps its way through our media. So, I wanted to go to the last question. We're gonna just quickly shoot around the room. Just kind of give like all I'm gonna say is like give an idea of how we think the news could improve, and where do you guys kind of see it going from here? So I can start. So the way that I think the news can be improved is like we talked about before. People need to just keep them in check, and also at the same time, I think that people need to get their information maybe from more steady sources instead of going right or left. Even though it's what you like, keep an open mind. And like we've said before, keeping an open mind and being an active listener and being well informed will overall lead you to being a better citizen of this country. And unfortunately, where I see it going from here is kind of more of the same, if not worse. I just think that the culture that we're in now, you're either right or you're left. You're set in your ways. And with the media outlets that we have now with social media, like we talked about before, you can choose what you want to see, and it only is going to become more personalized. So I'm going to be intrigued to see how moving forward, how people are able to discuss their viewpoints and understand where they're coming from, and we'll see what happens. I don't know. I mean, obviously can't tell the future, but.
Yeah.
There's a lot of questions, definitely a lot of questions, and I'm curious to see how the media moves forward from here. I'll get to you next.
I will pretty much exactly agree with you. And the way to fix this divide is that society has to come together and use, and this is kind of an economics concept, use your dollar vote
That's right.
for less partisan media.
I would say one thing I think that could be improved in the media, which would improve the way stories are covered in the media overall is I think we need to focus on diversifying our media and the individuals that we see. I think we need to see more women in media. We need to see more individuals of color in our media so that it gives more perspectives on issues, so more objective points can be discussed, because when all our anchors look the same, except for
Right.
two, we have an issue. I think being able to diversify the individuals we get our news from, whether if it's our anchors on a local level or on the national level, it's gonna make a difference, because we won't just see the same story being told the same way every time, because each of us have a culturally different experience in the same country. So I think being able to see that level of diversity in our media would cover more viewpoints, and it would give us more opportunity to see things more broadly.
So instead of moving the media back in, you saying populate
Yeah,
the space
definitely, definitely.
rather than pulling it
It's a
off.
beautiful thing to be a diverse country, but it's also beautiful to be diverse and informed.
Yes.
Yes.
On multiple
Yes.
different aspects. So I agree that we need more diversity in our media so that it isn't.
It gives us more.
It gives us a broader viewpoint. So I definitely agree. Alyssa?
Yeah, I think that we need to find a way to incentivize the media. Actually, instead of criticizing them, which I know might sound counterintuitive, but we're seeing a lot of this bias, and we have to find. So, how do I say this? The media needs to find a way to keep ratings up. That is how they make money, and that is not something that should be, in my personal opinion, victimized. I think that is a very legitimate thing. If ratings go up, money goes up, people's salaries get paid. That's a good thing. We should want that to happen. However, unfortunately, because there's a need for that, what is portrayed is influenced. So I think that we need to find a way to kind of incentivize real objective news being given and still be able to keep those ratings up. And so if we can find a way to do that, I think we might start seeing more actual news being given versus what's just going to get us through to the next week.
Yeah, I think it's going to be hard to do, but I think we need to get back to to media outlets just giving us the news, just giving us straight information. Because like what you just talked about, like everything goes off ratings, and I understand it's going to be hard for a lot of companies, but there are companies who do it and still do it and refuse to kind of spin things or get argumentative. But like, I think that a lot of the media platforms we have just need to get back into just informing people, because the better we're informed, like the better country we'll live in all honesty.
I agree.
This kind of just brings everything together. If a person is affected by an issue, they should be the one to discuss it.
I do
Let's
agree.
agree with that, which is probably not ever going to happen because everybody can't be a journalist, obviously. But I feel like that's the only way you're not going to get any type of influence from a higher up person, because the person is just speaking from, this is an issue, this is what it's doing to my family, this is what it's doing to me, and this is what needs to change about it.
I do agree, because a lot of the issues that we see, like, we don't see women writing women's laws about their bodies. We don't see women discussing them on the news. I think if we had, like you said, the individuals who were affected, I had written down also, like, why we had the Black Lives Matter protests coming out after police brutality. Those are the individuals who are affected. They need to be given their voice for these issues,
Right.
So the news should not only be informing the public for those who feel they aren't affected by it.
But for those who are too.
Right.
Everybody should be informed, and everybody should be in good sense.
Exactly.
So that's going to wrap everything up. Thank you guys for doing this. Good
Thanks.
discussion.
Good work.
All right.